Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching, much appreciated. So today what we're going to do is build something, obviously. I had this comment last week, and I am jealous of his YouTube name because that's pretty cool, but he asked, how do you take it a step further with fetch, and that's what we're going to do today. We're going to build a simple web app using vanilla JavaScript and an API to fetch some data, and then we're going to output it to the screen. So if that sounds good and you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you enjoy these coding tutorials, please subscribe and turn on bell notifications. If you don't like them or you have a question, then leave it in the comments below. I appreciate it. Alright, so let's get started. Alright. So this is what we're going to be building. As you can see, nothing too spectacular, but we are going to be building a simple web app where we can track the cost or the price of a Bitcoin or whatever. And then we're also going to have yesterday's rate and then today's current rate with the date and the United States euro and British pound. And then when you refresh, this is not React. We're doing straight up vanilla JavaScript. So for May 2nd, 2021, it is this price, yada yada. You get the idea. It's not really about the information we're getting, but how we're using that information after we get it from the API. Okay, so I have here, I have a folder, and I just have this logo in here, this Bitcoin logo, and I went to this gouger.io, and you can download it. Let me see. So as you can see, I'm using Atom text editor, and I have a folder Bitcoin app, and I have the logo. Let's get the HTML out of the way, and the CSS for that matter. So I'm going to create a new file, call it index.html, of course. I'm going to hold tab and type HTML and hit enter, and it gives me boilerplate. I'm going to do Bitcoin tracker app. Okay. Now, I am going to use a little bit of Bootstrap, just so, a very little bit, but just to give it a little bit better of a look. So I'm going to add Bootstrap in there, the Bootstrap CDN. And okay, so let's type out our stuff. So we're going to have a div with a class of main div, call it main div. Okay, this is where everything will be housed. Let's create another div inside of that. We'll give this class of header. This will just be that logo thing that you see in here. And actually, let me shut this down. Good. Okay. Don't need that right now. Because we're going to be, that was just a dev server. Okay, so, and then let's do, by the way, you could use VS Code for this. That's totally fine. I'm just using Atom text editor because, why not? Let's create an H4 and Bitcoin tracker app. Sure. Oh, I guess it should be Bitcoin price tracker app. Sure. Then in here we need a span, and this is where we're going to put in our image. The source will be logo.png. Alt, you can just say logo. Always put an alt for SEO. I know it's easy to not do that. Get a bit of width, some inline styling, width. Well, actually, this is not inline styling. Sorry, this is just another attribute that you can add to an image, an HTML image tag. Let's see. Gotta make this a self-closing tag. Save all. Actually, let's start our Atom Live server, which is what we're going to be using for this. I forgot to mention that. All right, good. So far, we're good. Close that old one. Bitcoin tracker app and Bitcoin price. Okay, let's go back to here. Now, we're going to need two divs for the actual information. So div 1 is going to have a class. This will be for the design aspect. Inner div. And since we're using Bootstrap, I'm going to give it a margin of 2. Okay, so that's one div. But also for this div, we need to give it an ID. And we'll call it Bitcoin. Okay. Actually, let me make sure this is all one line, just so there's no confusion. Because we're not putting anything in these divs. Everything's going to be added to these divs through the JavaScript. Okay. Which is, pretty standard. So inner div again. And I'll give this a margin 2 also, which is a Bootstrap class. Just to save our CSS. Okay. And we need to give this an ID of yesterday. I think I'm spelling that right. Yesterday. I believe that's right. Let me see. So, okay. I think that's it for our HTML. So now if we take a look at our thing, obviously with Atom Live Server, it automatically reloads. Let's open our console just for a good measure. But this is it. Obviously nothing showing in those two divs that I created because we don't have any information in there, right? But we're going to add that. Sorry. We're going to add that. So let's, you know what, let's get our styling out of the way. I'm going to add a new file called styles.css. This is not a HTML and CSS tutorial, so I'm going to add the link, and I'm going to add our styles file. What did I call it? Styles. Yeah. And you know what? In the interest of time, I'm just going to copy and paste. Now I'll put all this up on my GitHub, and I'll put the link in the description. So as you can see, it's not much, just a few things, and it makes it nice. Okay. This should be ID. Doesn't have to be, but in the styles it's a hashtag, which means that's going off of the ID. A dot is off of the class. Okay, so if you have a class, if you give it a class name in CSS, you give it the dot notation. If you're going by the ID, then you go by the hashtag, and the ID overrules the class name. Okay. So that's it. Close it up. Actually, let's take a look. See if it changed. Bingo. There you go. And as you can see down here, since we put a border around the two divs, the inner divs, as you can see, there's nothing there. It's just a standard empty div. But we will change that. So let's create our JavaScript file, which I'm going to call main.js. Oops. Console.log. I know. Don't cringe. Hello world. Cool. Save all, and then we got to bring it in here. Now you can put it up here in the head. Excuse me, script, and you can say defer. You can add the. Let's do that. What the hell? And we need our source of main.js. And let me just put this on one single line, which means, as you may know, the web page loads, the HTML and CSS load before the JavaScript does. Oh, I horribly misspelled console. I thought it was gray for a reason. Console. There we go. Okay. I was trying to sound like Anthony Hopkins there. All right, so as you can see, our JavaScript thing is, all right, let's get down to business. All right, get the Turbo Blaster Master's request, which is to use fetch. Now, as I said in my last video last week, fetch is not something that you have to install. There's, at least as far as I know, there's no package for it really. I mean, there are sub packages of it for React, but we're using vanilla JavaScript here, and you do not need a package. Fetch is just built into JavaScript. Okay, so let's start. We're going to do fetch. And now I should have mentioned previously where we are going to be getting this information from, and that is coindesk, which is right here. This is coindesk.com, and I forget where let me see, coindesk API, Bitcoin price index here. This is the documentation. It's pretty thorough. It's a real basic API, and it doesn't actually have an array of objects. It's just a bunch of objects. I'll show you. This is the actual API itself. We're just getting this data, and as you can see, it's just an object with objects in it. So, I mean, nothing too crazy. The one thing that they do ask, this is free, by the way. You don't need an API key. You don't even need an account. You can just use this endpoint, and you're good. The only thing that they ask, if you're actually going to use this for a production, like if you're really going to put this app into production, is that you include a link to their site at the bottom if you give them credit for it. But we're not going to deploy this. But if you do, I suggest you do that. Or they ask that you do that. All right, so fetch. So again, that API, there we go. Now remember, with fetch, we got to do a .then, and we have to take our response, and we have to set it to JSON, like that. Then we have to do another .then. We're doing promise-based, not async await in this case. You could, but it might be a challenge for yourself. Take this code and change it to an asynchronous code. All right, now, here's where we get to Turbo Master Blaster's. I love that. I love that YouTube name. I wish I had thought of that. Here's where we get to it. So we need to create something and store it in a variable, and then set the div in our HTML to that variable. All right, so let's get started. So we'll call it output, and it's going to equal to backticks, which are the little notch key next to your 1 on your keyboard. And I'm going to give it a couple of lines. Now, the reason I'm using these notch keys, template literals, is so I don't have to do a bunch of quotes and then pluses. I don't have to concat a bunch of things, because we're going to be putting a lot of variables here, as well as HTML elements, which in JavaScript they're called JSX. But still, this just makes it a ton easier. All right, so let's give it an H4 close off. Now, Emmet doesn't work, so you have to just type it out. Current Bitcoin price. Actually, I guess, yeah, what the heck. Actually, you don't have to add this in here. Well, whatever. We will. I'm going to give it a break tag. So this is how we're going to do it. So we're creating a variable called output, and we're setting it in these backticks, which is template literals. And then we're just creating our content inside of this. We're going to say last updated. We're going to get the date. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Good. Now, to add in a variable, you do $sign and curly braces, and we're going to do res.time.updated, which was just ciphering through. And like I said, this API, this one that we're using, this coindesk here, it's not an array, so we don't have to map through it. Now, that may change depending on what API you're using. If you have, arrays, and well, if it's an array, which most are, then you have to map over it. But this is just an object, so it's not very big, not a lot of information. Okay, so that's why we don't have to map over it. We can just do the dot notation to get the information. All right, so next we're going to create an unordered list. Close that baby off. Okay, I'm going to create a list item. Let's see. Close that. Oops. Close that list item. Okay. Yes. So I'm going to create a strong. Doesn't let me do it. I thought it would. Strong. Just to highlight it. Make it bold. Strong. We're going to say this is the. We're going to add in our variable, and we're going to say res.bpi, which is in the information, .usd .description. I can't spell description for some reason. So that comes directly from the API. All right. Let's add a colon, and then we're going to add in another variable. Whoops. $sign, curly braces. We'll say res.bpi .usd .rate. Okay, and if we look, where is it? If we look at the documentation, or I'm sorry, not the documentation. If we look at the actual API we're getting from, you'll see this BPI, right? That's where USD, Great British Pound, and the euro is, and then you get the rate, and that's what we're getting. Okay. Okay, so we're going to store it in a list item. I'm going to copy this down a few more times, and now this needs to change to, we'll do euro, and we'll do this change to euro, and then we'll make this change to the Great British Pound, and Great British Pound. Okay, so if we save, we're not going to see anything, right? This is just a variable, right? We got our response, and then we're using that response to get information. But as you'll see, nothing's changing. So then we need to come out of that variable, and we need to get the element. We want to tell JavaScript where to put this information, and so we did this Bitcoin. We gave it an ID of Bitcoin. So we need to grab onto that. We need to use the document, okay, and then we're going to get element ID, and then in here it's going to be Bitcoin, because that's the div. That's the div we're going after. And then we need to say inner HTML is going to be equal to our output. What am I doing? Output variable. Cool. And then at the end of this, let's just do a .catch in case there's any errors, which there shouldn't be, but just in case. Console dot error or E. Okay. Let's see if that gives us anything. It should. And there we go. And there's our United States dollar, our euro, British sterling pound, and it's all dynamically generated. Cool. All right. So as you can see, let me just do a quick recap. So we fetched the data, we put the data into JSON, we took the response again, and then we put it in this variables, and we just typed it out. So, and it's dynamically generated from the API. So if this description changes, then it will automatically change. All right. So it's kind of cool. This is not a big project, but it's just to get you going on how to do it. Okay. Let's see. So let's do our next one. So we're going to fetch again to the same API. So I'll just copy this down. Quotes here, and then of course .then. Or take our our response, res.json, convert it to JSON, and we do .then again. Here's our res again here, and then we're going to open that up now. So, oh, I'm sorry, my apologies. It's not the same. We're going to get yesterday's rate, so it's a little bit different of an API. Version 1 BPI historical for yesterday. So it's a little bit different. It's all in the documentation on CoinDesk. You know, and they have a couple of different ones where you can search by date, where you can I forget some of the other ones, but they had a few good ones in there. Okay, so you can get the rate for the last 30 days, etc. So just check it out, but this is to get you going. All right. So in this case, because I'll show you. I'll just show you the API. Whoops. Copy that. Come over here. I'm gonna put that in. As you can see, so the BPI, and then the key is actually the date of what they're referencing, and then the value is a number. Okay, so down here the time is the same as the last one, but as you can see, the key is the date. So you can't. So it could change tomorrow if you just hard code in this date, right? Tomorrow when it changes, it's going to error out and it's not going to show up properly. So we need to do a little bit different in this case. And this is standard JavaScript. So we're going to create a const, and we're going to say date, and it's going to equal, we have to get object, we have to get the keys. So we want the keys of what? res.bpi, which was that, I'll show you, which was this. So the keys, any keys in the BPI object we're going to get, which of course there's only one in this case. But like with the CoinDesk API where it has all the rates for the last 30 days, that's what you would do. You would get the keys. And we're going to store it in this variable called date. Now we have to get the value. Const rate be equal to object dot, you guessed it, values. Okay, and we want the res.bpi. So we want the values. Okay. Okay. So that's that. So now we got our keys and our values. So we have the date and the actual rate. Now we need to format the date. So let's store that formatted date. I think that's how you spell formatted. Will be equal to a new date, and we're going to put date in there just to format it a little bit so it looks decent. Now again, we're going to create let output equal those tick marks. And by the way, in JavaScript, you can call these the same variable because they're in different functions. Technically, fetch is a function. It's a promise-based function. Okay, so let's create a p tag. Let's okay. Let's close off that p tag. All right, and let's add in our formatted date. Oops. Yeah, formatted date variable. Okay, let's do a line break, and then we'll do strong tag. Strong. We'll say yesterday's rate. Let's do a span. And then we're going to add a $sign. We're going to add an actual $sign, and then we need another $sign for the variable. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, good. Save it. I don't think we should get any errors, but let's just double check. No, we're good so far. Now, it hasn't shown up yet because we haven't done that, because we haven't done, guess what, this. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to add a colon. I'm going to add this, and then we need to change this to, I think it was yesterday, which was the div name, I think, right? Yeah, yesterday. Equals output, and let's add on a dot catch. Equals console dot error or e. Let's see if we got it correct. Bingo. There we go. Yesterday's rate. There you have it, folks. We close down our console since we got no errors. So that's it. So hopefully this sort of gets you going in the right direction, on how to output the data once you collect it. So basically you store it in a variable like we did with output, and then you assign it to a div. Now that's not the only way, but that is the sort of way to start out with it. Okay? Listen, guys, subscribe if you found this video helpful. Leave a thumbs up if you found it helpful. If you have any follow-up questions, then please leave them below. Okay? And I think that's it. All right, guys. It's been fun. Thank you. Take care of yourself and each other. Bye.